I never thought my life would change the way it did, and if you had asked me a year ago whether I could ever imagine myself standing in front of a mirror, unable to recognize the person staring back at me, I would have laughed and shaken my head. I was just an ordinary boy, average in every possible sense, never the loudest, never the most confident, never the one to turn heads when walking into a room. My clothes were plain, my hair was unremarkable, and my life followed the same predictable rhythm day after day. But sometimes the most unexpected turns come when you're least prepared for them, and my story is proof of that. It all began with a dare. At least, that's how I explain it to people when I don't want to go too deep. But the truth is, it was never just a dare. It was something that unlocked a side of me I didn't even know existed, something I had been burying deep beneath layers of denial and fear. My friends were the type who liked challenges, silly bets that often ended with someone embarrassed or humiliated. And on that night, when the group turned their focus on me, I should have known that saying yes would unravel my entire world. "We dare you to try it on," one of them laughed, holding up a dress they had pulled from a costume trunk. It was meant to be a joke, something to get a reaction, but everyone's eyes turned to me, waiting to see if I would chicken out. I remember my face burning, the sound of my heartbeat louder than their laughter. I didn't want to look weak. So I agreed. The fabric slid over my skin in a way that was foreign, strange, yet not as ridiculous as I had expected. The laughter of my friends filled the room, but something inside me shifted the moment I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My reflection was distorted, not because I looked like someone else entirely, but because for the first time in my life I felt like I was seeing a part of myself I had never dared to explore. I brushed it off quickly, joining their laughter, acting as if it was just a silly game, but that night I couldn't sleep. The image of myself in that dress haunted me, not in a way that scared me, but in a way that pulled me deeper into questions I had never asked before. Was it possible that what I felt in that moment was real? Or was it just my imagination playing tricks? Days passed, but the thought wouldn't leave my mind. I found myself staring at shop windows when I walked through town, not at the things I normally looked at, but at the displays of clothes I wasn't supposed to wear. I imagined what it would feel like to walk into a store and try them on without fear, without judgment. But I couldn't, not yet. My family was traditional, my friends were the type who would never understand, and so I kept it locked inside me. Then came the second turning point. It happened on a quiet afternoon when my cousin came to visit. She was older than me, stylish, confident, the kind of person who always seemed like she had the world figured out. She caught me staring at one of her dresses as she unpacked, and instead of teasing me like I expected, she smiled. "Do you want to try it?" she asked softly. My heart stopped. I tried to laugh it off, but she didn't let me. "It's okay," she whispered, "I won't tell anyone." My hands trembled as I reached for the fabric. The moment I slipped it on, she didn't laugh, she didn't make a joke, she adjusted it for me, fixed the straps, and handed me a hair clip to pull back my bangs. Then she told me to look in the mirror. What I saw wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was enough to make my chest tighten and my eyes sting with emotions I didn't understand. She didn't call me silly, she didn't tell me to stop. She just smiled and said, "You look beautiful." That word echoed inside me for days, bouncing around like it had been waiting all along to be spoken aloud. Beautiful. Me. Could I really be that? I began sneaking moments when no one was around. Borrowing clothes, experimenting with hairstyles, trying little things that slowly began to build into something more. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw less of the ordinary boy I had always been and more of the person I was beginning to believe I could become. But every step I took came with fear. What if someone found out? What if they laughed, rejected me, cast me aside? The secret was heavy, and carrying it made me feel like I was living a double life. At school, I was the quiet boy in plain clothes, invisible to most. At home, I was the son who followed the rules, did what was expected, never stirred trouble. But when I was alone, in front of the mirror with the clothes I had carefully hidden, I felt alive in a way nothing else ever gave me. That secret world became my sanctuary. Still, secrets have a way of coming out. And mine was revealed in the most unexpected, terrifying way. My sister walked into my room one night without knocking. I froze, half dressed in an outfit I had been trying on, my heart slamming against my ribs. I waited for the scream, the laughter, the cruel words. But they never came. She just stood there, eyes wide, and then slowly she smiled. "You look amazing," she whispered. I couldn't believe it. She didn't mock me. She didn't threaten to tell. Instead, she closed the door behind her and helped me finish what I had started. She showed me how to do makeup, how to style my hair, how to carry myself with confidence. She became my partner in the secret life I had been building, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. The transformation wasn't just on the outside. It was inside me too. With every new step I took, I felt courage growing where fear once lived. But courage didn't erase the challenges. There were close calls, moments when my parents nearly discovered the truth, moments when whispers in the hallway at school made me wonder if people were catching on. Living with that constant tension was exhausting. Yet somehow, the desire to continue, to keep becoming more of the person I wanted to be, always outweighed the fear. Then came the day that changed everything. A school event, a themed party where costumes were encouraged. My sister pushed me, insisting it was the perfect chance. "No one will suspect anything," she said. "It's just a costume, right?" My hands shook as I got ready, but when I walked into that room, something incredible happened. Heads turned. Eyes widened. For the first time in my life, people noticed me. Not with laughter, not with mockery, but with admiration. Compliments poured in, and I felt a surge of confidence I had never known. For those few hours, I wasn't the invisible boy. I was someone stunning, someone unforgettable. That night, when I went home and wiped away the makeup, when I changed back into my old clothes, I felt a deep ache in my chest. Because I realized I didn't want to go back. The ordinary boy felt like a stranger now. I wanted to keep being the person I had discovered, the one who could stand tall and beautiful, the one who finally felt like they belonged in their own skin. But wanting it and living it were two different things. The road ahead was still full of shadows, fear of rejection, fear of not being accepted, fear of losing everything. And yet, every time I looked in the mirror, I couldn't deny it anymore. My reflection had changed, and so had I. From the outside, it may have looked like just clothes, just makeup, just a game. But on the inside, it was my truth, my identity, my courage. I had been an ordinary boy all my life, invisible and afraid. But step by step, with every secret moment, every daring choice, every whisper of encouragement, I was becoming something more. From ordinary boy to stunning beauty. And while my journey is far from over, I know now that I can never go back. Because once you've seen your true self, you can't unsee it. And maybe, just maybe, the world will one day see me too, not as who I was, but as who I've always been deep inside. But knowing who you are inside and showing it to the world are two very different battles, and I learned that the hard way. After that night at the school event, I couldn't stop replaying the reactions in my head, the gasps, the compliments, the stares that for once didn't make me feel small. It gave me courage, yes, but it also gave me a taste of something dangerous, hope. Hope that maybe I could live this truth openly one day, but hope is fragile when your world is built on secrets. My sister kept reminding me to be careful. She warned me not to rush, not to let the euphoria cloud my judgment. But how could I slow down when I had tasted freedom? When I had felt what it was like to be seen, not as an ordinary boy, but as the stunning beauty I had always dreamed of becoming? I started sneaking out more often, late at night, dressing up and walking streets where no one knew me. Every step I took in heels was both terrifying and exhilarating, as if I was tiptoeing across the edge of a cliff. Sometimes people glanced at me, and I couldn't tell if they saw a boy in disguise or just another girl passing by. The uncertainty was maddening, but in a way, it was thrilling too. Then came the night I was caught. Not by strangers, not by my parents, but by a friend. I thought I was being careful, but nothing stays hidden forever. He saw me leaving a cafe, hair done, face painted with the careful touch my sister had taught me, wearing a dress that shimmered under the streetlights. Our eyes met across the road, and the shock on his face nearly broke me. For a moment, the world froze. I wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But I couldn't. He walked over, slowly, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for words. "Is that you?" he whispered, his voice almost trembling. My throat was dry, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. All I could do was nod. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then, to my surprise, he didn't laugh, he didn't sneer, he didn't call me names. He just said, "You look different. But oh good. Good." That one word was enough to keep me standing upright, even though my knees were shaking. Still, I knew the risk. Secrets shared are secrets weakened, and I spent nights terrified he would tell someone. But he never did. In fact, he became another unexpected ally, asking questions, sometimes curious, sometimes confused, but never cruel. For the first time, I had someone outside my family who knew the truth, and that made the burden feel lighter. But with lightness came danger. Because now I wanted more. More moments of freedom, more chances to step out into the world as myself. And that desire pushed me to do something reckless. There was a talent show at school, open to anyone, with no restrictions on performance. My sister, ever the schemer, suggested it could be the perfect chance. "You could do it," she said, her eyes gleaming. "You could step onto that stage and show them." The idea terrified me, but it also sparked something deep inside. What if I did it? What if I could stand there, not as the ordinary boy they all ignored, but as the stunning beauty I had been hiding? The weeks leading up to it were a blur of preparation. Outfits, makeup practice, late-night rehearsals. Every time I imagined walking on that stage, my stomach twisted in fear, but also in anticipation. The night of the talent show, my hands shook so badly I thought I'd drop the microphone before I even started. Whispers filled the room the moment I stepped out. At first, I thought I was imagining it, that the weight of their eyes would crush me. But then something unexpected happened. The whispers turned into silence, the silence turned into awe, and the awe turned into applause. For those few minutes on stage, I wasn't the boy they thought they knew. I was someone else entirely, someone who commanded attention, someone who radiated confidence, someone who was beautiful. When the performance ended, the applause roared louder than I had ever dreamed. It was like a tidal wave crashing over me, washing away years of invisibility. But with every wave comes an undertow, and mine came the very next morning. Whispers spread like wildfire. Not all of them were kind. Some were cruel, mocking, filled with venom. I heard words I never wanted to hear, saw the smirks, the pointing fingers. The euphoria from the night before faded into a cold, sharp reality. Yet even in the midst of that storm, there were voices that rose above the cruelty. People I never expected came to me quietly, offering support, saying they admired my courage. My world had been shaken, but in the cracks, new light seeped through. At home, it was different. My sister defended me fiercely, but my parents, they didn't understand. Their disappointment hung heavy in the air, unspoken but suffocating. They didn't yell, they didn't punish, but their silence was worse. I wanted their acceptance, their love, but I also knew that I couldn't go back, not after everything. I stood in front of the mirror one night, wiping away tears as I wiped away makeup, staring at the face that was both mine and not mine. Ordinary boy, stunning beauty, two sides of me at war. But slowly, I realized it wasn't a war anymore. The beauty wasn't something separate. It was me, always had been. The ordinary boy wasn't disappearing, he was evolving. And maybe that's what this journey really is, not about becoming someone else, but about finally daring to become who you've always been inside. The days after the talent show felt like walking through a storm. Some people looked at me with admiration, others with pity, and a few with outright disgust. Whispers trailed me in the hallways, some kind and some sharp enough to cut. I tried to pretend I didn't hear them, but each word burrowed deep inside, and at night, when I was alone, they echoed in my mind until sleep became impossible. My parents still hadn't said much, and their silence hurt more than anything the outside world could throw at me. I wanted them to look at me and see that I was still their child, still the same person who had laughed at the dinner table, who had sat in the living room doing homework, who had hugged them goodnight. But it felt like they were looking at a stranger. My sister told me to give them time, but how much time could a heart endure waiting for love that might never come? And yet, even as doubt clawed at me, there were moments that gave me strength. My friend, the one who had caught me outside the cafe, stood by me more firmly than I ever imagined he would. He defended me when others mocked, and when I crumbled under the weight of cruel words, he reminded me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the act of standing tall in spite of it. His support was like an anchor, keeping me steady when the waves threatened to pull me under. But the hardest challenge wasn't the whispers at school or the silence at home. It was facing myself. Every time I stood in front of the mirror, I felt the weight of two lives pressing down on me. The life of the ordinary boy who never drew attention, and the life of the stunning beauty who turned heads but also stirred storms. Could I really choose one without losing the other? Was I destined to live in between, never fully accepted in either world? One night, overwhelmed, I packed everything away, the clothes, the makeup, the accessories, and stuffed them deep into the back of my closet. I stared at the empty mirror, seeing only the plain boy I had once been, and I told myself it was easier this way. Easier to be invisible than to be exposed. For a few days, I tried to live like that again. Going through the motions, wearing the mask of normalcy, pretending I hadn't already tasted freedom. But the more I tried to bury it, the heavier the emptiness became. It was like holding my breath underwater, waiting for permission to breathe again. And then something unexpected happened. My mother came into my room one evening while I was studying. She sat on the edge of my bed in silence for a while, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I braced myself for words I didn't want to hear. Instead, she sighed and said softly, "You've always been different. I don't understand everything, and maybe I never will. But I see how unhappy you are when you hide. And I don't want to lose you." My throat closed up, my eyes burned with tears I had held back for too long. I wanted to collapse into her arms, but I stayed frozen, afraid it wasn't real. Then she reached out and took my hand, and in that small gesture, I felt something shift. It wasn't full acceptance, not yet, but it was a beginning. A crack in the wall that had separated us. A chance. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without fear. From there, things didn't magically become perfect. There were still arguments, still confusion, still moments of disappointment. But there were also small steps forward, moments when my parents asked questions instead of turning away, moments when they listened instead of judging. And those moments, however fragile, were enough to keep me moving forward. I began to realize that transformation isn't just about changing how you look. It's about courage, about honesty, about learning to carry both the pain of rejection and the joy of becoming yourself. It's about facing the world with all its cruelty and still daring to shine. And slowly, I came to understand that I wasn't leaving behind the ordinary boy. He was still a part of me, the foundation on which I had built this new self. But I was no longer defined by ordinariness. I was no longer invisible. I had become something more, something brighter, something that people could no longer ignore. I had become a stunning beauty, not because of the clothes I wore or the makeup I used, but because I had finally embraced the truth inside me. And even if the world wasn't ready to accept it, I was. And that was enough. But life has a way of testing you just when you think you've found your balance, and my biggest test came sooner than I expected. It was during a family gathering, the kind where relatives you barely see show up with sharp eyes and sharper tongues. I hadn't planned on revealing anything. I had promised myself I would keep things neutral, keep my head down, just survive the evening. But my cousin, the same one who had first let me try on her dress, pulled me aside before the dinner and whispered, "You don't have to hide tonight. You've come too far to keep shrinking." I wanted to believe her, but my chest was tight with fear. Yet something inside me knew she was right. If I kept hiding forever, I would never be free. So with trembling hands, I made a choice. I dressed not as the ordinary boy they all expected, but as myself, the self I had been building in secret, the self I had finally started to accept. When I walked into that living room, the air shifted instantly. Conversations faltered, eyes widened, silence spread like a ripple through water. I felt every gaze on me, weighing, judging, questioning. My father's face hardened, my mother's eyes filled with tears, my relatives whispered into each other's ears. For a moment, I thought I had made the worst mistake of my life. But then something I didn't expect happened. My younger cousin, barely 12 years old, smiled at me, her eyes bright, and said loudly, "You look so pretty." Her voice cut through the tension like sunlight piercing storm clouds. Some relatives frowned, some exchanged disapproving glances, but in that moment, her innocent honesty gave me strength. I smiled back, my hands no longer shaking. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. My heart nearly stopped, but instead of yelling, he walked past me and left the room. My mother followed. The silence that followed was unbearable. I excused myself quickly, fleeing to my room, my chest tight with fear and regret. I thought I had ruined everything, that my choice had shattered whatever fragile peace I had with my family. I sat on the edge of my bed, makeup smudging as tears streamed down my face. But then the door opened. My father stood there, his expression unreadable. He closed the door behind him and sat down across from me. For a long time, he said nothing. Finally, he sighed and spoke quietly. "I don't understand this," he admitted. "I don't know if I ever fully will. But I see how much it means to you. And I don't want to be the reason you hide." His words hit me harder than anything else could have. Not full acceptance, not yet, but a huge step for a man who had been silent for so long. My mother joined us moments later, sitting beside me, holding my hand in hers. Her grip was warm, steady, filled with all the love I had feared I had lost. That night, for the first time, I felt like maybe there was a path forward for us as a family. It wouldn't be easy. There would be arguments, misunderstandings, painful conversations. But there was also hope. And hope was everything. From that night on, I stopped thinking of myself as someone living two separate lives. I wasn't an ordinary boy in the daylight and a stunning beauty in the shadows. I was one person, whole and complete, learning to walk a path that was uniquely mine. Every day was still a battle against fear, against judgment, against doubt, but with every step, I grew stronger. And I realized something important. Being stunning isn't about perfection. It isn't about flawless makeup or perfect clothes. It's about authenticity. It's about daring to be yourself in a world that wants you to fit a mold. It's about standing in the storm and refusing to be blown away. And in that truth, I found freedom. I had gone from ordinary boy to stunning beauty, yes, but more than that, I had gone from hiding in fear to living in courage. And though the journey is far from over, I know this: I will never again let the world convince me to be invisible. Because I am not invisible. I am here. I am seen. I am me. The days after that family gathering were strange, as if the air in the house had shifted. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't even easy, but there was something different now. Conversations that had once been avoided were slowly being spoken, silences that had once been suffocating were beginning to crack open. My father still struggled, I could see it in his eyes, in the way his words sometimes stumbled when he looked at me, but he was trying, and that meant more than I could ever put into words. My mother was gentler, more protective, always reminding me to stay strong, always telling me she loved me even when she didn't fully understand. And my sister, she never let me forget how far I had come, how brave I had been, even on the nights I doubted myself and wanted to disappear. At school, things were harder. Whispers still followed me, and sometimes laughter cut through the hallways like knives. But there were also small moments of kindness, notes slipped into my locker with words of encouragement, a teacher who pulled me aside and said she admired my courage, classmates who quietly began to smile at me instead of sneer. These were little victories, but they mattered. Because little victories, when gathered together, become a kind of armor. They kept me standing when the world tried to push me down. Still, the hardest battle was inside. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I was strong enough to keep going, if I was foolish to think I could live as myself in a world that wasn't ready to see me. There were moments when I wanted to go back to being invisible, to retreat into the safety of being ordinary, because being ordinary meant not being noticed, and not being noticed meant not being hurt. But then I would remember the feeling of walking on that stage, the sound of applause, the brightness in my cousin's eyes when she called me pretty, the warmth of my mother's hand holding mine, the unspoken pride in my sister's smile. And I knew I couldn't go back. I had come too far. One day, when I was walking home, I caught my reflection in a shop window. For a moment I stopped, startled, because I didn't see the boy I used to be staring back at me. I saw someone stronger, someone braver, someone who had endured whispers and tears and fear and still kept walking forward. I saw beauty not just on the outside, but on the inside too. And in that moment, I realized that my journey wasn't just about clothes or makeup or appearances. It was about truth. About having the courage to face the world as I truly was, no matter how much it tried to erase me. I thought back to the night it all began, when I slipped into a dress as part of a silly dare, and I almost laughed. How could something that started as a joke have revealed the deepest truth of my life? How could something meant to embarrass me have set me free? Life is strange that way. It tests you, it twists you, it breaks you down, but sometimes in those broken pieces you find the most powerful version of yourself. And that's who I had become. No longer the invisible, ordinary boy. No longer someone who hid in the shadows, ashamed of what the world might say. But someone who stood in the light, flawed, human, vulnerable, yet unafraid. Someone who dared to be seen. From ordinary boy to stunning beauty, it wasn't just a transformation of appearance. It was a transformation of spirit, of identity, of courage. And though my story is still being written, I know this much: I will never again let fear define me. Because I have learned that beauty isn't something the world gives you. Beauty is something you claim for yourself when you refuse to hide anymore. And I have claimed mine.